In all three readings this morning, we see people who are called by God and sent out. What's strange about it is that in all the cases, they were not people who it made any sense to send out. They were ill-equipped to do what God wanted them to do. In some ways, the people God chose, it doesn't make any sense. So, in the first reading, we have Amos prophesying, and we find out that he's not even a prophet. He's a farmer and a shepherd. And he's not even prophesying in his own country. I'm trying to streamline some of this stuff. I know I find some of the details more interesting than many of you, but let me just say this much. As you might remember, Israel was separated into two countries by now. The northern 10-most tribes was called Israel, and the southernmost tribes, the two southernmost tribes, was called Judah. By rights, Amos didn't belong to a family of prophets. He wasn't called to be as a prophet. He was in the southern country, but God sends him up to the north to prophesy. That's why we hear, go back home, get out of here, don't prophesy, In the gospel, we see the apostles, not that there was anything wrong with them, but one was a tax collector, another couple, maybe four of them were fishermen. We're not sure about what all the other ones did. But Jesus needs to send someone out to expel demons and heal the sick. That's not a job for human beings, right? That's what God does. God has authority over demons. And yet, Jesus sends them out, And wonder of wonders, and a little teaser for next week, they'll come back and they'll say, hey, Jesus, wow, the demons were subject to us, and we healed sick people, etc. They're as surprised as anyone else, It's unclear, really, why God chooses people, or how God chooses people. I remember, I think I've mentioned this to you, but I had a weird experience one morning a few years ago. I'm just standing in front of the mirror, brushing my teeth, and kind of, daydreaming or something, and I was thinking mostly about myself now, I don't mean other people necessarily. But I think I was thinking about some particular failure or something that I had done, and I said, Lord, why do you choose weak, sinful men to be priests? And I had this weird experience for a second, like a split second. I saw his face, what we think of as his face, in the mirror, and he said, well, what other kind of men are there? And it's true. If we think about Paul, he calls Paul was not only a murderer, but Paul was murdering people who were following Jesus. And that's the one Jesus picks to be his apostles, Who is the second reading about? Who are called there? It's a little convoluted. Actually, in Greek, it's even worse because about half of what we heard is one sentence. Trying to figure out what Paul means in all this sometimes is not as easy. But it's really us. It's we in the second reading. Paul is talking about being called. And I hear very often people say, oh, Father, I couldn't do that. I don't have this gift or that gift or whatever, you know. And what I think we can gather from the first and the third reading is that it doesn't matter. God doesn't call us necessarily according to our gifts, right? We have gifts, right? And we're supposed to use our gifts, but that's not necessarily the reason why God calls us. Why God calls, whom God calls, is really a mystery. And so what I would suggest to you is if you're asked, you know, to do something by God for the parish, for the church, or, you know, for the diocese, whatever, if you see someone in need or whatever, and you think, well, you know, I wouldn't be the right person for that person, I would suggest you put that aside. The question is not whether you're the right person for something. I mean, I can't claim to be the right person to be a priest, right? It's not the issue. The issue is God calling me? And at the end of the day, this is what I tell seminarians now, men have a lot of reasons to become priests, but at the end of the day, the only real reason to be a priest is that Jesus wants you to be. And I would suggest the same thing for all lay people. The real issue about whether you are the right person or something to do this, that, or the other ministry or something is not whether you have the gifts for it. It's whether Jesus is asking you to do it. And I might suggest to you, if Jesus asks you to do something, the only real response is, yes, Lord, I'll do it. Or actually, we have it, I think we're singing that song today. Here I am, Lord, you know, I'll go.